Yo, chat, we got, is YouTube harder than a 9 to 5? Honestly, I think YouTube is a little bit harder than a 9 to 5 just because a 9 to 5 you get guaranteed money, a guaranteed paycheck. YouTube, you got to grind, you got to hit 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours, you know what I'm saying? And then you got to struggle going through low views to even get some money. So honestly, I feel like YouTube is harder than a 9 to 5. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Let's go ahead and hop right into it.
Most people think that YouTubers just sit inside, fiddling their worm in front of a mic and camera all day and making millions, whereas 9 to 5 workers are slaves who waste their lives inside of a cubicle. I mean, they're not entirely wrong. However, this question is much deeper than the number of hours you work or the softness of one's hands. In fact, according to 3 of the most influential psychological studies in organizational psychology, the hardest part of a job isn't the job itself, but the effect that stress of a job brings to a worker. But what is stress? Let me explain. First, we have to look at who is doing the work. This is the person-environment fit theory. It suggests that stress doesn't come from the job itself, but from the friction between your personality and your surroundings. Essentially, workers perform best and feel the least amount of stress when their individual needs, values, and skills align with the environmental characteristics of the job they work in. According to the study, those in 9 to 5 jobs are most commonly affected by supplementary misfit, which is when the demands of a certain job do not align with the person's values or personality traits. For example, if an introvert is forced into high-stakes sales, where one bad quarter could be the difference between being employed and being KD. This misfit of character traits would cause an overexpenditure of emotional labor to bring themselves up to the level that they need to achieve their targets, increasing the emotional load on the worker day to day and their feelings of stress as a result. This can also bring the insecurity of complementary misfit, in which the more replaceable and under threat an employee feels, the more stress they feel under to perform. In other words, massive cortisol spike. However, the 9 to 5 does have a catch, which is separation. While this can make an employee feel caged, it can also bring a sense of security for many, in which once you punched out, your time is more or less yours. The same can't be said for the YouTuber, who, unlike 9 to 5ers who are burdened with external compliance, the YouTuber's fit in this model is an internal identity struggle. But why? Well, it all starts with the algorithm. The YouTube algorithm is a constantly moving and unpredictable target.
Man, what? I swear, YouTube algorithm, bro, you gotta really be a YouTuber to really like know all of this stuff, bro. Because if you don't, you're gonna get left behind. Like, you're not gonna be up to par with everything and what the algorithm is doing. So that's definitely a fact. YouTube, that's one of the facts that YouTube is harder than a 9 to 5. 9 to 5, you don't have to worry about no algorithm. Your same work is the same work that you do, you know, from day one. You're doing the same thing every day. That gets tiring. So I feel like yes, YouTube is way harder than a 9 to 5 because you do the same work every day. With us, we have to hop on trends and do all this other stuff so that way we stay relevant and people come back to watch us. So we can get the views and get the likes and get the comments and all the engagement. You know what I'm saying? And work, a 9 to 5, you don't got to worry about that. Do the same work for the same pay. Come in here, do that. Come in if you want some overtime, get some extra money.
Why? Well, it all starts with the algorithm. The YouTube algorithm is a constantly moving and unpredictable target, judging millions of videos against each other to bring the content that you, the viewer, will find the most interesting. Essentially, the algorithm is the boss constantly evaluating the performance of your uploads, and the moment your content falls out of alignment with what the audience finds interesting,
you fall off.
No HR meeting, no warning, you're fired! The algorithm doesn't hesitate to make room for more interesting content. This can cause a YouTuber to tweak their individual style to match the environment for higher views. However, this can also lead to a feeling of pressure to conform to a certain identity in order to get more views. That friction creates a constant low-level cortisol spike for the creator that leaves them feeling unfulfilled and out of place within their own job. And because you are the brand, this identity crisis is something you can never clock out of, recharge, and come back to. But even if you fit your role perfectly, there's a lot more that can influence the difficulty of your job. And this brings us to the job demand control model, represented by this matrix right here. This model highlights that stress increases when the demand of a job exceeds the amount of control a worker has over it. So when a person has a passive job, one that fits the low control, low demand quadrant, it can lead to stress cultivated through boredom, stagnation, and an atrophy of high-value skills that can leave an employee feeling trapped, purposeless, and expendable. An active job, on the contrary, is the holy grail in this model, creating an environment for the worker in which their skills are challenged in a manner that allows them to express themselves freely through their work, lowering stress and cortisol spikes. Now, most 9 to 9-to-5s exist in the high strain quadrants, in which the mental, physical, and or intellectual efforts of the job are pretty high. However, this next point is interesting. The amount of control one has over the work they do can either minimize or exacerbate the negative feelings a worker has toward their job. For example, making burgers and taking orders at McDonald's isn't necessarily a demanding task in and of itself. However, when it comes to the physical and emotional burden of dealing with angry customers or keeping up with a busy workload, the environment created by these uncontrollable factors raises the demand of the job significantly and can lead to higher levels of stress. On the other hand, a software developer might feel intellectually burdened by the difficulty of creating a $1 million app for their company, but the creative freedom that they have over their work can increase the positive feelings they have about their job. But what about content creation? Well, you may think that because content creators have total creative freedom over what they put out, this should be a straightforward answer, right? Well, not exactly. See, a YouTuber may be able to post whatever they want, but as you said earlier, that doesn't necessarily mean it will do well, even for the largest creators on the platform. And
yeah, you can have 1 million subscribers and say your average videos hit 100K. Let's say you post this one video and then it pulls like 20 or 30K. You think you fell off. And that's less money going into your pocket, because now you think, damn, I was pulling 100K every video and now I'm only pulling 20K. You have to be a strong individual to overlook that and not let it get to the best of you and make you want to quit, doing content because your views are low. So that's another fact why I say YouTube is harder than a 9-to-5. Got to be able to deal with that.
when you do something that the algorithm doesn't like, it pushes your content out to make room for a creator who creates more interesting content. Suddenly,
With
you aren't
less
dealing with
subscribers.
angry customers or your bitchy boss, Steve, but
Dealing with
rather
the
hinging
algorithm.
the success of your channel on an autonomous AI model that could shadow ban or demonetize you in an instant. Now, if you're in a niche that you like and feel passionate about, much like a job, this can very easily be considered an active job. However, how many channels could this be the case for? 0.54%, maybe even less. So we've looked at the person and the power dynamics behind stress at work, but psychology shows that humans can endure almost anything if there's a perceived benefit at the end of it. But what happens if that work feels meaningless? This feeling describes the effort-reward balance, when perceived efforts aren't rewarded to the level the workers feel they should. When you analyze stress through this lens, you're looking at whether the payoff is worth the pain. But here's the catch. Johannes Segrist, the creator of this model, identified a personality pattern called overcommitment. This trait is a personal coping mechanism in which a person either views their job as a means to an end, for instance, working a part-time job, or the worker has an internal drive to work harder than necessary due to an internal need for approval or control, even when the perceived rewards are low.
Because if I lose my job, I have nothing.
In other words,
That is true. Once you quit your job, you can go get another one. Unlike content, you have to keep your channel active and you have to be posting constantly every day. So that way people come back. You can't let them go on. You can't let your videos or your channel go unnoticed, because then they're going to forget about you. Unless you're a big content creator, of course, they're always going to come back. But somebody getting into content has to stay in the viewer's face constantly every single day, or at least every week. You have to be coming back every single time.
Commitment is a spectrum of choice that puts a worker at a higher risk for depression and poor mental health. For the overcommitted 9-to-5er, stress may be high, but has a safety net. Because the rewards are contractual and guaranteed, the stakes are contained. And although the 9-to-5 might cap your ceiling, leaving a worker feeling increasingly caged the harder they overcommit, the floor is at least there to catch you. But there is a psychological cost to that safety: resentment. Because a 9-to-5 is a fixed contract, any effort you give beyond the job description is essentially a donation to your employer. And Segrist argues that when your extra effort isn't met with a form of reciprocity, like a promotion or even just a thank you, it creates a sense of systemic injustice. Like, you did all that work, you're tired, you're bitter, and you're just watching the company profit off the very energy that is burning you out, without any type of reward. But content creation, it's a career of massive
But a paycheck, that's all you're getting.
but off the very energy that is burning you out, without any type of reward. But content creation, it's a career of massive imbalance, and the rewards are never guaranteed. Creating probably the
They're not. You could be doing 100 videos and all 100 of those videos can flop, versus you go do 100 shifts, you're gonna get paid for all those 100 shifts. You know what I'm saying?
biggest stressor for a majority of creators and any other self-employed profession, a gambler's stress in contrast to the 9-to-5 stress of stagnation. When you're on YouTube, you could work 24/7, and if the algorithm doesn't deem your videos interesting, it won't reward you accordingly. This, according to the model, can lead to lower motivation to work, lower feelings of job security, and in turn, higher levels of stress. So with all this information in mind, what's the verdict? Which is actually harder? Well, the truth is that the same person can thrive in one job but feel like hell on earth in the other. So in other words, you got clickbaited! But really you didn't, because is I believe that this is the definitive answer, and the reason most people can only answer this question anecdotally. What you deem as harder or more stressful depends entirely on your individual value, and not just the comparison of flipping burgers versus sitting at home all day fiddling your worm. If you value autonomy and an infinite growth ceiling, the 9 to 5 will feel like a cage in which the lack of control will be your primary source of stress. If you value security and psychological boundaries, the creator's life will feel like a nightmare. The lack of a clock out time and the volatile rewards will burn you out in months. So all in all, what we deem as hard isn't really competition, it's a choice of trade-offs. The 9 to 5 trades your freedom for security, while content creation trades your security for freedom and control of what you do and when you do it. Doing both will cost you something, but the question isn't which is easier, but rather which trade are you willing to sign. And as always, thank you for watching, and always remember that I do not give a fuck whether this upset you or made you disagree, so please stop typing.
But yeah, chat, let's talk about it. So I feel like definitely YouTube is harder than a 9 to 5. Think about it. Content creators, we don't get any benefits. We don't get 401ks. We don't get dental, healthcare. We don't get none of that. We have to be out of pocket when you're a full-time content creator because you're an entrepreneur, you're self-employed. So therefore, you know, you're working a job, you have a full-time job, you get benefits, you get 401k, pension, you get all that. That you get way more benefits. Rather than as a content creator, as being a YouTuber, you get none of that. You have to go out of pocket and pay for that stuff. And hopefully you're making a good amount so you could pay for that and be paying for your lifestyle, your living, and other things. So that's another reason why I feel like YouTube is harder than a 9 to 5. Like, give me a 9 to 5 making 150, 200K. I would take that over YouTube any day. Any single day. I will literally take that any single day. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Is YouTube harder than a 9 to 5, or is a 9 to 5 harder than YouTube? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think. Until then, I'm gonna catch you guys in the next reaction video, man. I'm gone.